everybody. My name is Miguel Penabella. I'm a PhD candidate here at the Department of Film and Media Studies at UC Santa Barbara. I'm also the graduate student researcher for the Carsey Wolf Center. Thank you all for coming out here. Thank you to the Carsey Wolf Center, and thank you, Don Hertzfeldt, as well.
Thank you.
So we all just watched me, and after this Q&A, we're going to watch It's Such a Beautiful Day, but we've scheduled our Q&A in between, which I think will be an interesting format. I thought first we'd start by talking about your time at UC Santa Barbara. You're no stranger to this department and to this university. You've been here twice before, and you're also an alumnus. Can you reflect on your time at UCSB? What lessons, classes, or experiences were particularly valuable for you?
Oh boy. Well, let me think. I was here. My freshman year was 30 years ago. This year, which is just terrible to think about. I was only 4 years old then, though. I was a really talented little guy. Yeah, I loved being a student here. I was very lucky. I think I almost went to USC film school. And I think I was happier than I would have been here. It was a very different campus, though, and I don't want to sound like a old person, but yeah, the film department when I was here, it was dirty, and there were spiders, and like raccoons, legitimately raccoons all over the place. I mean, all of the editing took place in an attic, like literally an attic. I'm just going to gripe now a little while. There was not a screen to project your films onto. There was a wall. It was all 16 millimeter back then. It was razor blades and the old school stuff. But the beauty of it was there was this old 16 millimeter camera up in another attic full of spiders that very few people really were using, and so I had access to it. I was just given the key to the building more or less for my 4 years here to just do what I wanted to do in there. And I got credits for it for some reason. And so like a lot of this is unrecognizable to me because as soon as I graduated, the film department got like a $500 million cash infusion or something happened. I don't know what it was, but this is all beautiful and amazing. And it was snowing all the time when I was here, and we made films uphill.
Do you remember any films you watched or classes you took that made an impact?
Oh, a little bit. I took a couple philosophy classes that I really enjoyed. I was a double major for a while with the drama. I wanted to learn acting, not to be an actor, but just to be a director. I wanted to know what it's like on the other side of that, so I could be like a better director for actors. I made some friends in that department. I don't think I took a production class other than the beginning production class because again, I was animating and nobody else really was, and so I was sort of the Phantom of the Opera. Like I had my apartment on like Sabato Tarde and was just animating in there for 4 years straight. And there'd be parties and like a lot of fun I could hear outside the window. And I do remember thinking like, oh, those fools, I'm making a movie and they're having sex and drinking, those idiots. I think the other film schools I was considering, it felt like the vibe was a lot different, and it felt more competitive. Situations where you maybe don't get to touch a camera at all until you're like your third year, and here I was able to get right out of the gate and just start doing stuff independently.
Where did your interest in animation begin?
High school. I was animating. Well, I can even go before that, but in high school I was animating on VHS tape. But I've always wanted to make movies since I was a very little kid. Don't know where it came from. I grew up in the Bay Area in Fremont, California, and I didn't know how a movie was made. They were really big, larger than life. I didn't know what a director does. I didn't know what a producer does. I still don't know what a producer does. But I started learning about a place in the Bay Area called Industrial Light and Magic, which is where all of my favorite movies in the 80s, you know, all of the coolest stuff in those movies was happening. And so I had a subscription to Fangoria magazine and Cinefantastique and Starlog, if anyone's old enough to know what I'm talking about. And I saved up $40 for the ILM coffee table book that I got from the flea market. And that was sort of my, like, visual effects was sort of my gateway drug to understanding that I could make a movie, because I didn't know how it was all done, but I could understand that this is a matte painting, and this is a traveling matte with, you know, this is how they put the spaceships in, and here's a guy doing something called stop motion animation, and that's how this thing's moving, and I could understand those concepts. And so I wanted to be an ILM guy before I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I knew most of those special effects guys' names before I knew directors' names. But it was funny because I came here thinking I was going to be Steven Spielberg like everybody else. I wanted to do live action. And I was already doing a lot of animation in high school, though, and there was a light that had to go off in my head to take animation seriously, because it was fun and it came easily to me. I didn't think it was something. I didn't think, and you have to, you know, like, to take a second and remember, oh wait, maybe, you know, I'm enjoying this and it's easy because I'm good at it. You know, you kind of discredit the fact that maybe there's, you know, something called a talent in there for that and not for this. So I sort of resisted animation after high school and then fell back into it here.
So I had the chance to correspond with one of your old professors, Dana Driscoll, who might actually be here in the screening, who recommended I ask you about your time living and working in Goleta. What was it like recording dialogue under the airport's flight path? And can you tell us about the vintage 35mm camera that you've used throughout your career?
Yes, thank you, Dana. So as I graduated and I purchased a 35mm animation camera like this. I saved up some money, and it was a large version of the 16mm camera that was here. And what that means is it's like, I'm not kidding, it's 800 pounds. It's got a crane on it that goes about 8 or 9 feet up. And it's like a mechanical cow. It's very friendly, but it's completely analog. And so your camera is pointed straight down on a platform where your animation paper is, and that's all controlled by little knobs. It's all manual. And so you sit there and you put one frame down and you hit a trigger and it takes a picture, and then you put your next one down, take a frame, and you just do that all night forever. And so I had a place, I moved into Goleta, and that's where I made and animated most of the movie you're about to see. About 3/4 of it was done here in town before I moved to Austin. And it was a strange time because the student films I made here got distribution nationwide. It was very strange. There were animation festivals in the theater back then. MTV showed weird stuff. And so I was able to make money from these student films to buy this camera and to not get a real job after graduation. So I was living sort of the dream. Like, I can make the movies I want to make. There's kind of an audience growing for them. And I have, like, complete creative freedom to come up with an idea and just start drawing it that weekend. I don't have to pitch. I don't have to go to LA. But the downside was, when you animate by yourself, it takes a very long time. And so I'm clawing through these movies, and this friend moves away. These people get married. These people go to Portland. These people go to New York. And I found myself sort of trapped in a strange way. almost like a Twilight Zone episode where you make a deal with the devil, and there's always a twist where you get like eternal life, and then you get like sentenced to life in prison or something. Where, like, I'm making the movies I want to make, but everybody's gone, and I'd go for like a couple weeks without like speaking to another human being. And I remember lots of strange exchanges with the grocery clerk at Albertsons, and like forgetting how to say like hello and thank you. But it was strange because I wasn't, like, now I look back and I'm like, okay, this guy was probably not very happy. But at the time, this was like, heroin. It's just like, I'm making what I want to be doing. And I was alone, but I didn't feel lonely. And I don't know if that's good or bad now. I wound up, when I finished It's Such a Beautiful Day, I finally saved enough money to buy a place in Austin because I was so stuck here with that camera. I had a great deal on rent in a studio space, and so I couldn't move without this camera, which was the lifeblood of all of the movies I was making. So when I finally was able to get a house, many, many years later, I trucked this camera across the country to finish It's Such a Beautiful Day. And I got to the house, and it was too large to get through the door frame of the house. So we cut a hole through the house to get this camera inside so I could finish the movie. But when you're in production, which is most of my life, I mean, it's like you're in love, and it's like this, you do stupid, weird things, and you will cut a hole through the house to get the last few shots of the picture. But it's good to be back. It's just, it feels to me like a past life, like literally like somebody died here and I was reincarnated, and I can encounter these memories from these very, very late nights.
Well, I wanted to also talk about the film that we just watched, which is your newest film. In some ways, it's a reworking of an earlier project. Can you talk about the process of making this film and also promoting it? Because you've chosen not to show any trailers or even show any promotional images.
Yes.
So can you talk about that?
Well, to that end, yeah, there's no trailers. We haven't released a single photo from it. We just, the very first screenings of it in Austin, nobody knew anything going in. And I miss that. I love that. And I decided to stick with that this time because it's so different. I don't know what clip we could possibly share out of context anyway, because even in context, you're like, what are we watching? So I just like the idea of people going in cold. I think, we know too much these days going into any picture. Yeah, in 2021, I wasn't planning on making anything. I was ready for some time off. And I got a call from a band that I really liked, and they said, we have a new record we're working on. Do you want to come hang out and listen to some demos and just see if there's like a vibe to do something? And I liked them very much, and so I did, and got to know them, loved the music. And it was an interesting project because I'd never done something like this before. Nobody wanted a music video. That was like right out. Like that seems kind of dead to everybody. And they mainly just said you can use as much of this record as you want to just do whatever you want to. And so I settled on like 25 minutes of music, and we talked about a few ideas and things that we were of the same generation, and just things we thought were cool when we were little kids, like. Before the internet, if there was like Pink Floyd's The Wall on VHS, it was circulated around your high school kind of covertly. You needed like a cooler, older sibling to have access to sort of underground stuff back then. So we're kind of nostalgic for that kind of a vibe. And so I started writing, and I took all of this music with me back to Austin. And I also started thinking about like my favorite songs in life, my favorite songs since I was a teenager, just growing up, and how interesting it was that I could have been listening to this song for 30 years, but I might not be able to explain to you what it actually means. Like, what is this song about? Like, unless it's a very literal song, like I Want to Hold Your Hand or something, so many of my favorite songs are, they paint like a memory. It's like a scene, but there's something ephemeral about them that you can't really hold, like a really good poem. And that's probably why we return to these songs so much. And so I thought, well, what does that feel like in picture? Like, how do I get that feeling in a picture? And the writing sort of became more abstract and a little bit more like a fable. And so I was putting it all together, and I liked the challenge also of setting rules for myself where there's no dialogue, there's no sound effects. You know, we're telling a story through picture, like a silent movie in a way, and what's that going to look like? And then I had the running time already set for me, which was also unusual. Like, the music is what it is, the beats are there, that's what I'm going to be cutting to. So it was just a cool, different way to work and try something different. So I was about a year into it. It was mostly finished, and the skeleton was there, and then we lost all of our funding. And it was a really tough period where I eventually had to come to the conclusion that I had to remove all of this music. And I spent another year just reconstructing the entire thing with totally different music. And I'm not telling that story to make you feel sorry for the movie or me, because so often, in fact, all the time in any production, every day you're solving problems, big ones, little ones, and every other day you're pivoting from what you wanted to do to something different, whether a massive emergency happens or a little one. So much of filmmaking is not incredible, sexy, creative thunderbolts. It's this is not working. How do we make it better? You know, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I wrote. How are we going to make it better? And this was, to me, now it's like a movie that was made by accident. Like, I was crossing the street and I was hit by a car and a movie fell out of me, and I'm still trying to like deduce what happened here, because it's not a movie I was going to make in the first place before the band was involved and we exchanged ideas, and then it wasn't what it was going to be after that all went sideways. And so to me, it's like this beautiful thing that couldn't have existed any other way, born out of this chaos. And I like it a lot. I mean, it's shorter, it's meaner than the original cut was going to be, a lot different, and believe it or not, it's more abstract than it was originally intended, which I also prefer.
I'm glad you brought up the silent film kind of feel to it. Can you talk about that influence? I mean, there are parts where it almost kind of looks like you've animated like film grain into the film.
Yeah, there's hand-drawn dirt all over the place, artisanal dirt all over the film. In the early days of putting it to composing the images and just what is this going to look like and coming up with a look, it just looked too clean. I was just like, I need to f this up more. It just needs to be dirtier and dirtier. And so I just added more and more of those scratches and dirt and stuff. And then it just grows with the pollution of the world that they're living in. I just couldn't, and I still can't visualize it without that.
You also brought up the music, which I think is immediate. Like, once you start the film, you hear these like amazing drums, and it's this kind of very jazzy, very percussive soundtrack. We get a little bit of classical, which you've used throughout your career, various classical compositions. Can you talk us through your thought process in choosing the music in your films?
Yeah. So again, this was a very different process because it was all hands on deck and everything is on fire. So when I was starting over again, my initial instinct was to get away from lyric. The original score was all songs and lyrics, and they're irreplaceable, and I didn't even want to pretend I could find something that would connect in any way. So my first thought was drums. I just want beats, and I just want like really aggressive, building tension percussion. But also, anytime you hear a drum solo for like more than 30 seconds, it gets like really boring. So my mind went to, for whatever reason, the JFK soundtrack, from 1991. I was 15 years old and a nerd, and I bought like every soundtrack that came out back then. This was a John Williams soundtrack, and when I got it, there was this amazing drum track on it. And at the time I thought, is there nothing John Williams can't do? And then I realized it's this guy, Brent Lewis. And so I figured it's this contemporary to the 60s, because it was JFK, piece that they just got. It was called Ode to Buckwheat, and it's just this cool, slow, jazzy drum thing. And then fast forward, to 30 years later, I thought of that track again, and so I was like, who is this Brent Lewis guy? I look him up, and he's not from the 60s. That was a contemporary record from the 90s, and he's still recording stuff. And so I just got in touch with him and called him up and explained the project, because I had found 2 tracks of his, which wound up in the movie, that are from a record he released called Drum Sex. There's my mic. Drum Sex. If you ever record a percussion album, there is no greater title than Drum Sex. Going through the track listings, they're not even like double entendres, they're like single entendres. And it is an incredible record. You should all listen to it on your way out tonight. It's on Spotify. So anyway, I found 2 tracks from Drum Sex that are incredible, and I got them in there. And I got to know Brent. He's retiring now. He's in his 80s. He's living in Joshua Tree, teaching drums. But he's got like his setup is like he's got like 30 bongos, and they're all like tuned to a different note, so he can play them kind of like a keyboard. And it's just this incredible sound. And you can find him on YouTube. There's an old clip from the 70s where he's on like the Jerry Lewis telethon with like Bojangles everywhere with the like lapels out to here, bongoing away, and like Jerry is like dancing next to him. It's nuts. I told Brent I'd say hi to every audience on his behalf, because he sort of rescued the movie. And I was like, Brent, I'm going to call you the greatest drummer in the world everywhere I go. And he's like, Don, don't you dare call me the greatest drummer in the world. Just call me the drum wizard of Joshua Tree, California. So that's Brent. And yeah, the rest, there's a big opera piece that comes in where the movie takes an incredible right turn, and we're all wondering, what are we watching now? That was originally lip-synced, obviously, to the music that was there in the first place. So I needed singing there. And when I heard this version of Marble Halls by Joan Sutherland, who's this Australian opera diva, her voice is just incredible. But when I was trying to replace the music there, my mind initially went to Klaus Nomi. And for anyone who doesn't know who Klaus Nomi was, he was a performer in the 70s. He had an act that he would do at a variety show in New York City where nobody knew what was going to happen. The curtains would open, smoke would come out. He would float forward somehow in this giant like Mars Attacks cloak with like sparkles. And he shaved like a really intense widow's peak and spiked his hair, and he had like kabuki makeup, and he moved like a robot. So he was like this being from this other place who would just sort of appear, and there'd be like lightning and thunder effects. And so the crowd, this tough New York crowd, would like catcall him and like jeer him, and this beautiful aria would start playing, and he'd start singing, and you'd think, oh, he's just lip syncing. And then you realize, oh my God, like he's actually trained his voice to reach this amazing soprano range. He's just singing this beautiful thing as this creature. And the crowd just gets enraptured, and by the end of this, they're completely silent. The smoke continues. He just floats backwards, and the curtains close, and they're just completely awestruck. And it was just this being from another place delivering this beautiful, inexplicable thing. And so that's what I was thinking, just the vibe I needed for that moment, which I got from Dame Joan Sutherland. So much of the music it's like when I'm writing and when I am drawing and composing a shot, so often I can't explain it, but I'll hit upon something, whether it's just a line or an image, where it's like, oh, of course, that's it. It's like, for lack of a better word, in my head, it's iconic, and that is in the movie, and I can't change it. And it's so strong that it's like, it's always been there, and I'm remembering it. I'm recognizing this idea that's always existed, and I'm just like an archaeologist uncovering this thing. It's like, oh, of course, that's it. That's in the movie. And that happens a lot with the music. Something will drift through, and it's like, that has to be in the movie. I don't know how or why, but that's the decision.
I also wanted to talk about some of the kind of broader themes across your work. So like in Me and It's Such a Beautiful Day, and even the couch gag that you did for The Simpsons, you explore the concept of deep time, right? Or like the life of a single person juxtaposed against like all of humanity, or like what comes after humanity. Can you talk us through that interest in these ideas about time and why you've made it such a big part of your work?
Time and memory, too. I feel like memory keeps popping up in these things. I haven't got a clue is the short answer. These are things that I just keep thinking about and returning to myself. Like with It's Such a Beautiful Day that you're about to watch. That's a movie that I started writing like 20 years ago. So when I watch that one now, first of all, there's so much I want to change, and there's so much I wish I had done differently. I wish I'd done this better. But it's also like taking a page of your diary from 20 years ago and reading it in public. Like, okay, like these are the things I was interested in then. This is what I was worried about. This is what I was thinking about then. You're a different person now, but it's like this document. But there are things that just keep recurring, and I guess it's just proof that it's all made by the same person. One thing in me that I mean, there's honestly some Buddhist ideas in me, and there's one thing I've been returning to is that this idea that that pain is like a game of tag, in a sense, where like if someone cuts you off in traffic, you've got like this gross feeling of anger, and you're going to carry this nasty feeling until maybe you drive angry and cut someone else off in traffic, and then they're going to go yell at their waitress and ruin her day. And it's just like this, you see it briefly in some images, like when someone gets hit, they glow this black, or when they get yelled at, they glow this black stuff. And I think it's even on a larger scale. You can see parts of the world where it's just this white-hot ball of pain that is just being passed back and forth between people for generations. And so that was something that, it's one of several ideas in there, but, how do you tell that in picture? How do you, get it without dialogue was sort of the fun challenge. But yeah, memory is the other one that I'll probably always be writing about that. It's just so strange and interesting to me. And same with the Simpsons thing. Like, it's a 2-minute thing, and I still wedge in like memory references, and
Well, I also wanted to talk a little bit about It's Such a Beautiful Day. Can you talk about how you developed the look of the film? I mean, you have these collage-like frames, which we'll all see in a moment, that mixes both animated images and also some live-action footage. To me, it reminds me a lot of like some experimental cinema, like Stan Brakhage or Jonas Mekas. But I'm curious what your creative thought process was like.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't already seen It's Such a Beautiful Day, this might be a more exhausting afternoon than you maybe thought you were signing up for. The camera, if we go back to what I was talking about with this camera, this immovable camera, if you wanted to move the camera, or if you wanted to make the camera look like it was moving, rather, you'd have to do a bunch of math. And so you're sitting there with your artwork, and if you want to do like a pan or a zoom, you got to crank this thing half of a centimeter, take a frame, next drawing, half a centimeter, it's just this massive nuisance. And if you're shooting and animating your own stuff, I just wanted to make life simple in the camera room. So if you look at my really early stuff, like my student stuff, the camera never moves like almost ever. There's like 1 or 2 zooms, but if I wanted to move it, I'd put it in the artwork because it was just too much. And also you're shooting on film, and if you mess it up, you've got to wait 2 weeks and get the film back and do it all over again. So those films especially remind me of silent films in a way because, you know, they're so static. The camera's just there, and then things happen in front of it, and then we cut around it. And I knew when I was writing It's Such a Beautiful Day that that wasn't going to be good enough. This was such a different story, a bigger story, and I needed to figure out like another way to get around not being able to move my camera, which is a weird handicap for like the first 20 years of your filmmaking careers, to not be able to move a camera. And I had this idea to split up the film frame, because then I could move those around. And without, you know, the camera just stays still, but then I'm shooting through, again, through my knowledge of ILM, mats. I can mat out this corner of the frame and expose this other corner of the frame through a little hole that I'm shooting through, and then block that out and shoot this other. And so I'm making these like collages and zipping them around, and the holes open and close with stop motion animation on this tiny, tiny scale. And so I think it's fair to compare it to experimental film because that was experimental, the writing was experimental, the sound was experimental. But to me, I don't know if at the time I had even seen a Stan Brakhage movie. I don't know if I had, certainly not here. I saw like Meshes of the Afternoon, or there's a couple of the Kenneth Anger ones I remember seeing here. But by and large, the camera technique there was inspired by ILM, again, just like understanding, okay, I used to animate on VHS. You can't do that on VHS, you're gonna tape over it, right? But on film, okay, it only reacts to light, right? Okay, so I can expose this and paint this over here and use light in this clever way. So that was all, just, to me, it's a special effects movie. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of where the writing then, the dam broke down, and I was able to tell this story more impressionistically. So I didn't have to draw a city, I could suggest a city with these little windows.
So in addition to doing all this technical wizardry and animating the film and you know, directing it, you also star in the film. You are the narrator.
Oh God, yeah.
And you have a very particular like kind of rhythm of speech and the performance. And I was curious about like how you shaped that performance and how did you determine what was right for the film?
That's a great question. So I did not want to narrate it one bit, but I was doing the sound design in the middle of the night on Matilda Drive and then in Austin, and I just became the only convenient person I could just torture more takes out of, because I was writing as I went. And so I don't like myself. No, I don't like the. I don't love the narrate. I think the narration's fine. I like the writing pretty good, but like it was just a marriage of convenience. But I did get into. There was a particular rhythm that you touched on that I was like, okay, what is? To me, the voice is his stream of consciousness, and we only hear what he knows, and you'll understand that soon enough. Early on, my two touchstones, I wasn't trying to impersonate these people, but my two touchstones for like narration was Rod Serling and Ferris Bueller. This sort of matter-of-fact, deadpan, this is what's happening, neutral sort of narration. I think it's fine. I think it's serviceable. I've been told that people who love this movie, especially during the pandemic, would play just the audio so they could fall asleep to it, which I'm going to take as a compliment. I think it works for what it is, but I don't think I need to like ever act again. When I later directed my friend Julia, who did voices for the World of Tomorrow movies, you know, I was like, we were just trying to figure out what this character sounded like and get it just right. And then she started doing this thing that I was like, that's it, I like that. I like how you put emphasis on this word and not that word, and there's like almost like a melody to like the way it's written. It goes da 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 da. And she's like, yeah, I'm just impersonating you now from It's Such a Beautiful Day. So that's why you like what I'm doing. So yeah, I won't be watching this one because otherwise I'll be crawling under the seats. But you know, I like it okay. I like it okay.
So we have a number of students here. I'm sure a lot of them are probably also taking the animation class on campus. Do you have any advice for a young filmmaker, young animator?
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to listen to it, but I have some, I guess. So it was very different, like I said, back in the day. It's interesting. So like way back when, we all had to shoot on film. You know, digital wasn't a thing. And so it was very difficult just to make anything. And as Dana used to say, any movie that just makes it to the screen is a miracle, because you go through so many problems and trials. Even your junky student film just being projected is a small miracle. And that's very true, because film is expensive, it's difficult. I used to drive to LA constantly just to watch my reels and to get an idea of what I shot and take notes on what I needed to reshoot. So that's all to say, back then, if you could finish an independent animated short film at all, then it was pretty easy to get it seen and to be noticed, because like I said, there was like MTV, there was Bravo, the Sundance Channel, IFC, there were theatrical animation festivals. I mean, my student film would open in like 400 theaters, because back then maybe there would be like 50 to 100 animated shorts being produced that were significant every year. And so there was a very small pool, and it's easy to get noticed out of that pool. And then today, I feel like everything's flip-flopped. It's very easy to make anything now on your phone. It's very easy to upload it and see what happens, but it's much harder to get noticed because there's just too much stuff. Everyone's making stuff, and it's just like it's just white noise, online, and how do you shake through and get noticed? And when I think about it, the only constant is film festivals. Film festivals are still relevant, and it's one thing that you can do that to shake through. And when I was a student here, I do remember a lot of other kids would finish their movies and then they'd say, "Thank God that's over with," and they'd put it in a closet. And I've always had this weird, anger towards that, because you guys paid so much money for this and you worked so hard on this. To me, a movie doesn't exist unless it's being seen. Literally, it has to be seen by somebody, or what's the point? Why did you do this? And so I was very scrappy, and I submitted my work to literally every film festival I could find an entry form for. I copied. There was a video lab on campus where I tortured them by saying, I need 200 VHS copies of my 2-minute thing. And so I'd get all these VHS tapes, and I'd mail them out with the entry fees. Because, why else did I spend so much time torturing myself making this thing? And I think that's still true today, just in the sense that, if you're gonna watch a short film, you're probably more likely to see this one that won some award, or okay, this one was at Tribeca, or this one. There's just, or you can get a legitimate review, just some way to differentiate yourself from the pack is, I think, what film festivals still do. And then there's people there too that are very helpful to get to know, just programmers, other filmmakers. I mean, unless you want to be a YouTube guy, that's totally fine too. But you're going to have trouble monetizing your work, and that is really the key to why I am still able to do anything. I never had like a grant. I never had a producer come help. No one would invest in this stuff because it's weird. And why would they? And it's perceived as not profitable. But because I've had to make everything myself and pay for everything myself, I own all of it now. And that's a body of work that's become incredibly lucrative. And so, but anyway, to get back to the student thing, if you want to monetize your work and if you want to be independent, I would start with the film festivals if I was, a kid now, and build that way, because it's too easy to disappear on Vimeo or YouTube or wherever, and then you're forced to go make an advertisement, or you're forced to do something you don't want to. And my dream is for artists to be able to make a living making art. Like, that's, wow, that's novel, So I would say film festivals.
Well, we're very happy that you've managed to stay successful all these years and to bring your film back to your alma mater. So
Well,
let's
thank
all
you guys. Oh my goodness.
thank Don for coming out.
Thank you. And we're coming back, right?
We are coming up. So
Yeah.
we're going to screen It's Such a Beautiful Day right now, and then we're going to come back after the screening for audience questions. So don't immediately leave. Once the credits roll, we will return.
You're going to be so tired of the sound of my voice after today.
Hello, welcome. Glad many of you stuck around for this audience Q&A. So the way we're going to do this is we have our colleague Emily off to the side. She will call out people if you raise your hand. When you raise your hand, please wait for one of our lovely student staff to come bring you a microphone so that we can all hear you. And then if you could please ask your question in the form of a question, that would be terrific. So Emily.
I wanted to ask a question about how you draw hair.
Hair?
Yeah, hair.
Okay.
Because of your style, it's basically the only thing that you can really use to distinguish between a lot of different characters across almost all of your work, right? This includes World of Tomorrow, me. And so I just wanted to ask how you get ideas for characters' hair, how you choose to differentiate between different characters' hairs.
Thank you. I've never been asked that question before in my life, and that's very interesting. I think my character design in general comes from newspaper comics. First and foremost, when I was a little kid, I read, there was kind of a holy trinity of Calvin and Hobbes, The Far Side, and Bloom County. Like, those were like the three comics that I had to read in my parents' newspaper. And then there was always Peanuts. And what I love about those comics, especially Peanuts, like if you read those from like the peak in the 50s, 60s, 70s when Charles Schulz was just like doing it, they are beautiful forms of modern art. Like, they belong in a gallery. Like, they are so underrated. The economy of the line that he and other cartoonists accomplish. Because when you're reading a newspaper, you read Garfield in like, not that Garfield's a good example of this, but you read Garfield in like, 4 seconds, and you're off to read the obituaries or something. And so each one of those panels has got to be, every line has to have a purpose. There can't be any fat, because the eye it's guided from this panel to that panel to that panel. And if you look at Charles Schulz, who's like the pinnacle of this, it's stunning to me how he tells a story in these panels with not a single line that doesn't belong there. And so my inspiration for animating really comes from that spirit than probably other animated films. And when I'm thinking about the hair design, it is something that I don't remember an instance where I struggled, where I was like, what is Emily's hair going to look like? It was always something or other from the get-go, and I don't know why that is. But I do remember, also to your point, like Bill with this hat, which is functionally hair, he started out in comic strips also. I did a comic strip for my website like forever ago, and he was a character just going around town, and I loved these strips because there was never a punchline. There were sort of anti-comic strips. It was just like Bill went shopping for shoes, and then this happened, and then the last panel would say like, and then Bill went home. And there was never anything funny about it. And I originally put a hat on him because, again, differentiate him from all of the other minimal things I'm doing. Years of developing, I did other projects, and then this Bill character stuck around from the strips, and then maybe I'm going to make it a short film. Who is this guy? And the hat was still there, and then it became, okay, well, why is he wearing a hat? Maybe he's had some surgeries. Maybe he's covering something up. He's got no hair. And that, the writing just kind of goes from such a simple image like that.
I'm just curious, after working so many years in media and creative arts, how you've maintained autonomy and joy in it, despite having to meet deadlines or do projects that aren't necessarily your first choice, or how you choose to take on things and balance your joy despite having to make money or get things in on a certain time.
Yeah, well, I'm very spoiled because I have no deadlines, and I have been able to do what I want without compromise, and that is crazy. And the blessing and the curse of that has always been I'm very aware of how lucky and strange that is, that every time I'm not in active production on something, I feel like I'm wasting something. And so I'm always in active production on something because this is just this beautiful situation. But the hardest part of that, and the hardest part I think of anything like this, is just doing it every day. Just finding a new way to motivate yourself to get out of bed and go to the desk again and draw more little round heads over and over again. We're talking years. And we were just speaking backstage. It's hard for me sometimes to watch not just my animation, but anybody's animated films, because I'm just seeing years of someone's life, weeks and months, just going by in fast motion, and that can get really heavy and sad. I've just found that the motivation just comes from the seed idea, whatever it is you've written, whatever it is you want to get out of you. And that's true of if you're writing a book or recording a record. Whatever that is that you're sharing, it's for some reason it's a good enough idea that you become addicted to it. Or maybe it's just a joke in this film. I want to get this gag, and then I'm going to work on the next scene. But it's something where you love the idea so much that you can't not work on it. You literally can't not do it. And some days you're sad and tired and you don't work as hard. But once you find that groove, it's I'm not going to go to the party. I'm not going to play the new video game, which is a drag. But this thing is just kind of becomes all powerful. I am working on bigger projects now. Like I said, Me wasn't intended to be a thing at all. I thought I wasn't going to make another film by myself like that, because it is getting to a point where I'm not getting younger, and it would be great to work with a crew and just collaborate and just try something different. And there's a project that's been in development for a long time. That's a big, expensive feature film that needs a lot of money and a big crew. And it's something I've started writing over 15 years ago. And to say it's in development that long is kind of a lie. You could just say it's in stagnation for 15 years. But we've got, you might have heard, I've got Ari Aster is now producing it. And that is going to be a fun new challenge for me to just finally be able to work with other artists, because I've never made something in almost 30 years that I didn't draw everything by myself. And so that might present all new hurdles and fun things to figure out. But again, though, it's going to come down to the ideas. If the ideas are still interesting, that's your fuel.
Hi. Like someone else mentioned, It's Such a Beautiful Day has always been my favorite movie since I've seen it, so I wanted to thank you for making it. And the part of the film that has always stuck with me the most and moved me the most is the ending scene. And I was wondering if you could talk about kind of what inspired that and how you came up with it, and also what it means to you. And secondly, I was curious who your favorite rapper is.
I'm going to answer the second question first. Favorite rap? Well, I love it. There's a Jay-Z line where he says, "I'm not looking at you dudes, I'm looking past you," which I think is like the most badass line. But I don't like all of I don't like all of his verses. When he was on the Monster one with everybody else on the there's a Kanye song, The Monster. Well, I thought he was kind of weak on that because he's like, "I'm a zombie bloodsucker," and it was like really lame. I wasn't impressed with that one. So I don't know if he's my favorite, but that's my favorite line that anyone's like dropped. The first question, the ending. Do you mean like the ending sequence or the very ending? Like when he starts to live forever. Right. So to me, I mean, I know it's open to interpretation and everyone's got their own ideas. So I'm just going to say what I like to think about it, but I don't take this. I mean, I just don't want anyone to think they're wrong. Like that's the worst thing like a film writer can do. To me, it's the refusal of our. Because if the narration, if the voice is his inner monologue, if we go with that theory, then it's the refusal to believe that we can die, like our self can cease to exist, like it's the panic that keeps us up at night, like, oh my God, it's gonna really happen. It's that the brain is just like not accepting it, and so it weaves this fantasy for him. That's comforting and beautiful and sad. There was some good writing in that piece. I liked that bit. I wouldn't change that so much.
Hi, Don. Thank you for coming today.
Hey.
You talked for a second about your writing process as sort of a jumble, and I wondered how that comes together when you're writing sort of a chronology, because now you've sort of created 2 trilogies with World of Tomorrow and It's Such a Beautiful Day, and I wonder how those get constructed, because what I've seen with both is that they seem to expand in scope each time, while you still sort of maintain like the very specific details, and I wonder how that juxtaposition continues across your writing.
It's sort of, it's such a beautiful, World of Tomorrow, right now it's 3 pieces, but I'd love for that to keep going. I feel like that's a completely different creature than what you just saw, and that's why I was careful to call them episodes, because those could just, in theory, like I'd love to get to episode 12 with those. I feel like that's a space that I could play with for like a long time, whereas this is someone's, an individual story that had a real closure to it. And I'm sorry, what the question was, as far as the writing, It's Such a Beautiful Day was interesting because I think we mentioned it was originally released as 3 short films over the course of like 5 years or so. And that's a long time to be writing and thinking about something like this, because altogether it's like just over an hour. Originally, the ending that I thought would be the ending for the whole thing was how the second part ends, where has a memory of being a little kid on the beach, and it's like he thinks about all the wonderful things he's going to do with his life. When I was writing the second chapter, I just kept going, and I just felt like I was. That might be my favorite section of the 3 parts, the second part, now, because I was really finally getting the camera stuff figured out and finally getting the rhythm of the writing figured out. And so I cannibalized all my other ideas for what was going to be in the third part and just shoved them all in the second part. So when I got to, and then I took some time off and made something else, and when I got to writing the third concluding part of this, I had like no material left over, which is a really dumb way to make a trilogy. It's always felt like a tightrope act anyway, because I do tend to write as I go, because the films, take so long to make that you're just going to get better ideas, you know, in the second month, the third month, the 12th month, the 15th month. I mean, there's no reason that your first ideas are the best. And then also when you get into production and you get your hands dirty and you start to see images and sounds, so many more sparks are flying. You get so many better ideas. And it's animation is like the least spontaneous way to make a movie. You're making one frame at a time, right? You're clawing through it. And so to find a way to get a feeling of spontaneity into that mechanical process is so important to me, and also so important for me to stay engaged and not get bored of my own projects and not get tired of this joke that I've been working on for 6 months or whatever. So the ability to throw stuff out and keep writing and feeling my way through has been really big. And you just risk falling on your face a lot. But of course, once you get bigger with more people involved, bigger crews, a lot of money at stake, you can do a little of that less. And it gets much more riskier to try and write and change things on the bigger stage. And so, you know, I've been very happy and lucky doing it this way, but you know, at least the next project I've been writing for 15 years, so hopefully we won't have to redo too much of that one.
All right, well, let's give one more final round of applause for Don. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.